So thank you everybody for coming today. I was trying to understand. You like everybody else, we have a lot of opportunities to be a part of, right? Every day there's something in the inbox that says, can you participate in this, or can you be a part of this? And unfortunately, because of how time and schedule works, you don't get to do everything that you want. So you have to prioritize in life with the things that mean more to you. I had the opportunity to sit with Ron a little while back, and he shared where he was in this process, in looking through the lens of the state of Florida, and the incredible magnitude of what this opportunity represents. So I heard every word he said, and it wasn't just him sharing something, it was his vision for what the state of Florida is and could be that got me excited to come here and share my lens with you guys. So Ron, thank you for that invitation. So let's start the journey. Like Commissioner Wells said, we have a local startup company in town by the name of Shadow Health. I had the privilege to be one of the founders. My wife and I moved from Manhattan roughly about 8 or 9 years ago. My wife matched to do her pediatric residency in Gainesville at Shands Teaching Hospital. And because of that, we relocated from New York City to Gainesville. And we've made it our home. So throughout that process, I had to figure out what I could do here to earn a living. I was representing venture capital on Wall Street, and it wasn't quickly apparent what translated. So fortunately, because of the wealth of healthcare and education that was represented in town locally, I was able to find some research that was able to be licensed and then commercialized in the form of a technology and now a company. So I'll share a little bit throughout the process, but from a start now, I'm going to ask several things throughout the presentation. Hopefully I won't convey facts as much as I will challenge you to think through certain mental models that pre-exist. Okay? So in doing that, I'm going to start off the first layer of thought through asking you to take a leap from corporate inferences. Okay? So I'm going to say, here is what we're doing, here and how it impacts, but how can this concept, how can this mindset translate or permeate or transcend my corporate environment? Okay? I'm going to use these factors to kind of walk us through the thought process: safety, health promotion, imagination and creativity, recruitment. And then I'm going to leave you with two thoughts. One, more of a parting observations, and lastly, I'm going to challenge each of you to come up with your own equation for what does an opportunity look like for me through my lens. Okay, what you do, how you approach world, how do you live your life on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so I may or may not come back to this slide, but I'll try and keep everybody at the same place. So I started off with a formula. Unfortunately, my mind works a lot in formulas. My head does a lot of computing with how certain things work. So I'm going to try and spare you the logic, but get to the bigger picture of why I brought this in to the equation. So in business, the antithesis of success is what you would call a hope strategy. What do I mean by that? So if I have created a product and I have the goal of becoming the company to have generated $1 million of revenue, it will be inadequate of me to just simply go to would-be customers and say, here's what the product does, and I hope that you buy it. Would you all agree that would just be a very poor way of approaching the market and asking a consumer to purchase your product. I think we see every day during commercials the reach that the market has honed into us to try and brand their product into our brain every 3 minutes and competitively continue on and perpetually through the day, through the evening, through the night. They continue to remind us of why we should buy, why they should be the owner of the money that's in our pockets. So this formula is really, it originated in a sales formula, okay? The numerator is really representative of how do I convert a would-be consumer to change their money for my product, okay? And this is really the formula that gets here, okay? And the numerator is how do I keep that existing customer, right? So I took a business concept and I applied it to a community model that relates to a healthier community. And I'll explain a little more. So under this model, the numerator, what I've done simply is to say, if I assume that I have a certain amount of legislators, right, that are willing to listen to what a healthier community means, and I multiply that by the amount of meetings that they could potentially have with folks like in this room or elsewhere, and then what percentage of those conversations convert those would-be citizens into what we would call a new, healthier citizen, somebody who's now possibly going to drink the Kool-Aid of what we're here for, right? To think, hey, do we need a cross-Florida trail? Okay? Every time someone shares a vision, how many new folks in the room walk away thinking, I'm a champion of that model, and I want to support that model, okay? So that's one half of the equation. The second half, which is equally important, is there a leak in the existing ship? Okay? So that means, is the community losing their advocates for cyclists simply because of the death rate that happens to cyclists, right? Or other components that aren't friendly for cyclists. So, to just, again, keep it simple, here's the in, right? And here's the out. And at the end of the day, do we have more in that's new? Or are we losing the folks that are already on the boat simply because of the facts of our community? Okay? So I'm going to try and bring us back conceptually to this mental model. That's why I've spent a little bit of time on this, because it's important as it relates to each of the slides. So safety. I've tried to capture it in a very simple way. But there's two components that drive what I conceive of safety. I'm going to start it off with the business model. Okay? So for safety, I know that I have to look to my employees as to whether they're on time to work. Okay? And I had the privilege of being introduced to one of the founders of the MIT Sloan Management School about 6 months ago. And Dr. Jay Forster is one of my icons growing up. He introduced system dynamics into the world, and the world has never been the same since. It's really learned, it's been referred to in the last 20 years as problem-based learning. But this guy's brain is bigger than this building, and he's influenced more countries on how to think than most folks. And what he simply says is time management is the best indicator of success in life. Okay, now that's the inference. So the question is, as a society, now, so the business concept is the more efficient you are with your time management, the more successful you're going to be. So the first question now, can we draw a corporate inference from that established, proven business model to now go into the community model that says, can we as a society acknowledge that our greatest failure as a community is the correlation between two positions? One, If I am always in a rush in life, I am going to have more accidents. Okay, that's a direct correlation. There's a lot of studies on that, and I won't go into them, but just accept it. Now let's take the inverse of that. If I build a margin of time into my day where I start my day 15, 20 minutes earlier, and I'm not so much in a rush, am I going to be the person that hits the cyclist off their bicycle? Something that we need to think about as a community. So time management plays a very large part in what we can consider of something that we can change in our society. Every day I have to evaluate my business to say, are my employees efficient? Because efficiency is, time is money. Well, what does that mean for our society as relates to safety of cyclists? What does time mean? Does it mean life? Does it mean greater health? Does it mean greater fulfillment? These are things that I want you guys to come up with your own answers to. You fill in the blanks. Okay? So that's one concept. How does design factor into safety? Now, I've had the luxury of hearing some of the earlier talks, so I won't really embellish too much on design here, but here's a gentleman that's been asked by his employer to go and fix some cable lines. Now, as an employer, am I putting to risk my employee by asking them to work in an otherwise hazardous environment? Well, that has a lot to do with design. How do I design my environment, my work environment, to facilitate a safer experience? Okay? So how does this translate or infer into our community? Well, we've heard about it at length today, about trails. Okay? We've got several examples of how design actually increases the safety when it's forethought, when it's actually intentionally planned. Okay? So infrastructure is a conversation. How much are we having that? And at what cost? By not having it. Where does that leave our citizens? Are they more at risk because we don't have these design conversations with enough passion to show the correlation of lack of design with more injuries, fatalities? Going back to the equation, how much of our recurring folks that are on the boat representing the champions of and the advocates of healthier futures, the cyclists, the runners, how many of those folks are saying, you know what, I don't think I'm going to run today? I've had many conversations where folks say, I won't ride at a certain time of day on a certain road in a certain way. And I've seen that countless times. Those aren't being spoken of enough because we don't count the cost enough. Forums like this, the takeaway should be, shame on you. Shame on me for staying silent. So let me close with this concept with one more thought. So 8 months ago, and let me preface this with a little background. So I've grown up very competitively in many different sports. As relates to this topic, I've raced competitively, starting off from I was 10 years old on bicycles. And I've done motocross. And I've done in college, all through college and graduate schools, I've done competitive cycling. And now I have the privilege of having kids, and I've introduced that to them at a very young age. They could probably ride a bicycle before they were able to walk. And my wife is an activist. We ride frequently. Okay? So I'm trying to show you a little bit of a concept. 8 months ago, I am driving down Newberry, and there was traffic in such a way that there was a cyclist on the right-hand side of the road. Now, not on the lane, but on the road. And we all know that there's not a bike path on Newberry by the mall. So I'm heading west. Now I'm going, there's traffic, so I'm going probably 10 miles an hour. Now, here's the interesting point of why I'm sharing this. Within 3 minutes, somebody pulls in front of me, and I drive a truck with mirrors that are very extended. I hit a bicycle, and the rider falls off. Now, if with being as sensitive to cyclists as I am, and outdoor athletes as I am, growing up year-round sports, and I have a motorcycle, and it's a street bike, and I hit a rider off their bicycle, who is able to avoid it? Right? With my hypersensitivities. Now, why do I share that? If I'm able to hit somebody off, and I was paying attention, and I was driving defensively, who is able to avoid a circumstance like that? It goes back to design. What are we saying about our community? What are we saying about our infrastructure? Is there need today to improve? Now, do we have a great infrastructure in some parts of our town? Absolutely. But is the design needed in other areas of our community? Absolutely. When I hit that person, the first thing I thought was, that's me. I'm hitting myself off the bicycle. So if there's any takeaway, I want you guys to personalize that message today. Right? I want you to personalize seeing yourself get hit off the bicycle. Because that's what happened to me. And I'm not blaming only design, but it facilitated the accident. Let's bring it back to the corporate environment. What does health promotion have to do with productivity? What's the correlation? Well, just to start off with the nature of the culture that we've established at Shadow Health. Okay? For those in the back that can't see it, I've listed 3 examples of activities that we've done in the last 2 years. Okay? We've competed with the Ragnar event, which is a 100-mile event from Miami to Key West, right? And we've done it twice, okay? And the event, we had over 20 employees that attended the event. We've had 5 triathlons in the last 2 years, okay? We've had 20 races. Now, why do I share that? Well, all of these events, they bubble up, right? So what does that mean? There's weekly activity that each of our employees gets involved into, that participates. Well, you say, well, why does that matter? Well, we have 2 average sick days per year per employee. What's the national average? It's close to 4. The national average per employee is 4. We are at 2. We are half the national average. Now, you can't convince me that that isn't directly related to how active we are as a company. Okay? So, how does that correspond to productivity? We launched our commercial product on the 1st of January 2013 with one university purchasing our product. One. Today, we are in over 400 higher education universities across the country. Now, for those who don't know how hard it is to get into a higher ed bureaucratic university to sell a product that is educational based and is cloud based to a population where the average consumer in our market is over 50, we're asking them to use a digital product to teach students how to talk to patients. I attribute that 90% to our team. And I contribute their productivity back to a large degree to their health and how active they are. Our guys on average, the average week, they're probably pushing 90 to 100 hours. To sustain that, right? To sustain, and that's not me driving a whip. You know what our mandatory office hours are? You've got to be in the office between 11 and 3. We don't micromanage. We hire smart people that with high integrity. And we make sure that what they do, hey, you're on your own as long as you produce. Okay? So what's the other half of the health promotion equation? It's fulfillment. If you don't have high productivity and low fulfillment, guess what happens? Attrition rate goes out of the roof. We're lower than 3% attrition. National average is well over 10%. Well over 10%. Okay? We've grown in the last 2 years from one employee, the guy who's standing holding the mic, and we're over 60 employees now. Okay? That means that our culture in our environment is fulfilling each employee to a point where they don't want to leave. They look forward to coming. It's not a burden to get up. Okay? So how does that transcend into the community? Our employees are more active into fundraising, into mentoring opportunities. Okay? International missions. Our team is very active, and we're not telling them to do it. They do it because of who they are, because of their interest. Okay? Again, but that is not a coincidence. We are being intentional with these things. How does this infer back to the community for cyclists? Are we creating a community that we've got more individuals coming to town or leaving town? These are questions that I want you guys to be thinking of. What are we saying about ourselves as a community? If we can find, are we creating a fulfillment strategy? Or is our attrition rate growing? And then ultimately, how does that convert into becoming a more engaged citizen? So these two next slides, I'm passionate about because I think creativity and imagination is what drives who we are as individuals. We each have a hidden crave to be creative and imaginative in everything we do. I'll give you the short reason of why I think this. I was fortunate to attend about 10 years ago an economic summit on a mission trip to Egypt. And the keynote speaker was a pastor of a church. And this guy said that his operating budget for missions to other parts of the world was 80% of his total operating budget. That means he only spent 20 cents out of every dollar on maintaining his facilities. The other 80 cents out of that $1 he put into the pockets of those individuals to go and help people around the world. Well, I was so inspired by that, I've tried to create a system whereby Our operating budget at our company is for maintenance, meaning troubleshoots, make sure our customers are happy, make sure that the bugs, we use our computer scientists to make sure the bugs in our product are met and dealt with, and then we're always listening to the customer. We only spend 40 cents out of every dollar on maintenance. The average company, 80% on maintenance. Okay? Am I living for today as a company, or am I living for tomorrow as a company? So where does the other 60% go? It goes into research and development. What does that mean? It means a lot to different people. Well, I'm going to define it for you. In us, we're looking for new products, new benefits for existing customers, new customers for different markets, and lastly, new countries. We just came back from a trip in Hong Kong where we were invited to be a keynote where one of our customers using our product demonstrated the increase in performance for the students using our product. We're now talking to 30 different countries around the world that want our product. Why am I sharing that? For inferences, we're not investing more in what we think we need to hang on today. We're investing in the unknown for tomorrow to make our product better. So what is that? What's the inference now to our community? The inference is, as a community, what is our operating budget for the trails? What's our operating budget to change the design of our infrastructure? It's great to maintain our roads because that keeps us safe. But how much are we building in for our kids? You know what one of my biggest goals is to keep my kids in Gainesville. How do I do that? By making this a preeminent community on a lot of different fronts. Not just academic, not just athletic, but social. Okay? Gainesville is just a myopic example. How do we get that mindset that we need to be investing the majority of our dollars in improving, not maintaining status quo? Recruitment, part of that. How do I get the folks from Silicon Valley here as the top computer scientists? How do I get the folks from New York City? How am I competing with the entertainment and the lifestyle? Well, I can tell you one way. 60% of our employees live downtown. The majority of our employees, what do? They ride their bicycles to work. You know what I want you to take away from this slide? Cycling is not a sport. Cycling is a lifestyle. I sell lifestyle when I recruit. I sell culture. I sell transformative environments. That's how we compete with the San Frans. I'm not selling a sport. The cyclist has to transcend the mental model that I'm out here riding a bicycle. No. This is part of my DNA. Office renovations, we spend a fair amount of money renovating. I don't know how many of folks you know where we are. We're based in the old Rice Hardware building. We took it over. We gutted it. You know the first thing that we put in there? Showers. Why? We want the environment to encourage and facilitate activity, athletic activity. I want them to come inside sweating from their day because they've gone out for a bike ride over lunch, gone running in the afternoon or early morning. We can't talk the talk without walking the walk. Here's the problem. As a society, everybody who's not in this room thinks people in this room is these. Why are they not all here? Because they don't think they look like that. What's part of our responsibility when we leave here? To convince them we don't look like that. We look like this. This is what the message is. We're not all elite endurance experts. We are families that take bicycle rides around our neighborhoods. We are trail riders that ride once every 2 weeks. We are elderly that have trikes. We are the individual that just bought their first bicycle and may ride it once every 6 months. We need to flip the classroom and get them in here and y'all out there. It's perception switch. I don't want to cheerlead y'all. Y'all already all drink the Kool-Aid. Let's get the Kool-Aid into their hands. And let's retell the story. I'm going to finish off with this one slide. So part of my relationship with God has a saying. And you're going to say, well, what in the world does God have to do with bicycles? Well, I'm going to tell you. There's a concept that says faith without works is dead. And I'm not going to turn this into church, but I'm going to tell you one thing. If I'm in this room and I believe that all this needs to happen, but I don't do anything, your belief sucks. If you're living on belief and you're not acting out your belief, who are you? You're a cheerleader. And you don't even have pom-poms. A famous French fellow once said, the object of war is victory. And most people end it there. They put a period at the end of that, victory. Well, I say, let's take it to its logical conclusion. The object of victory is occupation. Here's what I want to leave you guys with. What is occupation look like in your life on this topic, in this town, on this day? I don't have an answer. I have one for me. I'm here. That's what it looks like. I hope that you can't sleep without thinking about this. I hope that you stay up at night and you have rocks in your pillows until you understand what occupation looks like in your life as relates to this topic. Don't talk about it, live it. So I hope that you've gotten a glimpse of my passion in this topic, and it transcends us bringing just money into the community because of cycling. I want to selfishly keep my family here. I want to selfishly have better relationships with my neighbors. I want to selfishly not hit another cyclist. I want to selfishly be able to do things that I'm not able to do today because someone hasn't thought more and talked more and done more about this topic. Thank you for your time.